Welcome back. We're in mid-Rand today, and we're talking to the Department of Home Affairs. The Minister is with us to talk through some of the issues that are perhaps affecting you, particularly if you're an immigrant. Let's unpack that. Minister, this new immigration law has got people excited, some agitated even, and I'm just wondering, what was the rationale behind changing it, and some of the things that have come out? I mean, it's been tested in court already, and it's failed the test in some areas.
Let me start by saying, Peter, that we are moving into a new era of immigration management. There was a time in our country when the whole discourse about international migration was very negative. Many people spoke of it as something, a nuisance, something to be combated, and viewed it negatively. We're moving into the era of management of migration. It imposes on us a responsibility to be proactive, to consider the fact that there are many positive contributions that the process of international migration will bring or brings to our country, but there are also risks. And so we have put two issues at the center of how we seek to manage migration. One is development. How do we harness the process towards national development to benefit fully from it unfolding, because you can't stop it. But on the other hand, how do you address the risks that it imposes, including the risks to national security, particularly the risks to national security? And surely we wouldn't want South Africa to become a risk to any of our neighbors. That is at the heart of what we are trying to do in the manner we are managing migration. The changes that we introduced in 2007 and 2009 were not even wholesale changes to the legislation that South Africans must expect. South Africans must expect that we are going to bring about an entire new discussion on international migration. We will bring wholesale changes to the policy framework, to the legislation if need be, and we will test the existing legislation against the policy framework that we are going to bring about. So that process is at an advanced stage, and I think once we are ready to come out and say, now this is the international migration policy framework that we want to propose, we will then engage all South Africans. So the changes that we are talking about, and I'm very happy that there is such a robust public discourse about the new immigration legislation and regulations, because it says that South Africans, not only academics and practitioners and Home Affairs officials, are being involved in the process, and politicians, but ordinary South Africans are being drawn into the discourse, outlining their own views and expectations of what international migration is about.
But if you're losing court cases, does this suggest that you haven't thought through the legislation carefully? Because one would have thought, Derek Honeycomb has talked about unintended consequences. Has this been rushed through without perhaps thinking it through?
There's only been one court case we have lost, and we are appealing it because we believe that we are correct in our approach. And so we have to appeal, and I think once that process has been concluded, we will then be in a position to agree that we have lost that, and then we have to go back and rethink. But secondly, the comments about from different quarters, I think are not unfounded. I think people are raising genuine comments which we are paying attention to, we are listening to. That is why, from the very first moment I announced these regulations, I said that our doors are not closed. We are very much open to further engagement if there are unintended consequences to the implementation of the program. You can never introduce new regulations that are perfect and will work without hurdles. You had to expect that there would be challenges, and we are open to testing those on the ground, and if there is a need to change anything, I said we would change it. It was to those who said to us from the very outset that we're going to take you to court, and we said to them, wait a minute, if you want to go to court, it's your right. You can go to court. We will come and defend ourselves. But you can never come to us and say these regulations are unconstitutional when the regulations are an implementation framework of a legislation that is constitutional. Now, if you want to go to court, then go to court. We will meet there. But we are open to continuous engagement with the different parties. As I have said myself, I received a letter from Minister Hanekom. I have responded to him and said I'm willing to meet with you to discuss those, because we wouldn't want these regulations to have a negative impact on tourism and other elements of our economic growth and development.
All right, okay, let's go straight to the tables and get a sense of what this room is saying. Connie is on table 23, and I think this speaks to readiness for some of these new laws. Connie, where are you?
Thank you, Minister. And I would like to welcome the immigration regulation changes. There are actually a few changes that are really positive. The biggest concern for me is the immigration regulation implementation. We're finding that the missions abroad are not aware of how to implement these changes. We're finding issues where VFS is also not aware of some of the categories of visas and how to implement them. And the situation is we're spending a lot of time as a business educating officials that should be aware of how these implementations will impact on the business. Requirements are actually also a problem because a lot of the missions don't understand what are the requirements, for example, what are the requirements for a critical skills visa. I spoke to the SA Embassy in Mexico yesterday, and she said that she'll need to get back to me because she needs to review the regulations. So, Minister, this is really real. Okay. There are a lot of issues in the marketplace. It is impacting on business. We're having huge issues where companies like Mercedes, for instance, have to actually travel to Port Elizabeth to file visa applications, and people have to down tools. We have engineers working at ESCOM.
Connie, unfortunately, I'm going to have to rush you along because we run out of time, but I think we've got the gist. And the question is, are the embassies ready and the missions ready to deal with these issues?
The main thing really is the implementation. I think we should have been given a transition period to actually transition into the new regulations, and we haven't really been given that period.
Okay, all right. What we're going to do is get back to you, actually, because we're going to take a quick commercial break, and that'll give you a couple of seconds to gather your thoughts. So we'll be back right after this to talk about implementation. How are the foreign missions dealing with these new legislations? The answer after this.